Good morning. This is Father Tim, and it is the Sabbath day, Saturday, the 13th of November. Thank you for joining us in our time together live online. There is my sound check. We are live on YouTube and we are shared on the Facebook. In our time together this morning, we will be resuming our continuous read of the Acts of the Apostles. Please to take a moment to post a greeting, share a comment on either YouTube or Facebook. And know how grateful we are for your presence among us. Good morning, Francis. So Acts 21, and we are at the 27th verse of chapter 21. So to recap a little bit, Paul is now in Jerusalem. Whether or not he accomplished his goal of being there by Pentecost, we are not told. He comes and spends time in a meeting with the brothers, the leadership of the Jerusalem church community. He is told by them, by James, the Lord's brother specifically, that those among the Jewish community in Jerusalem have heard false reports about him from his enemies in Asia Minor and other places throughout that area where Paul had conflict with the Jewish leaders. They have borne false witness against Paul, said that he said things that he did not say. And up on that list of things that are false, they have shared that Paul has spoken against the temple. And so James and the brothers have this idea of how to show these rumors to be false. They direct Paul to take himself and others, a couple of others that they are putting forward, and go to the temple and pay for the rite of purification, have their head shaved, offer the sacrifice, participate in the ritual life of the temple, and it will be clearly shown that there is nothing in what these Jewish persons in diaspora have said about Paul. So there's a possible route. Now, keep in mind, though, what has been said already about this trip before Paul has made it to Jerusalem. Agabus has proclaimed that Paul would be arrested and handed over to the Gentiles. So how's this going to work? Well, we're at the point of finding out today. We are at that point where Paul is in the temple. And so we join Paul in the temple and continue reading in what will be a dramatic moment now. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Earl. Good morning, Don and Linda. Before going to the reading itself, though, let me point out the fact that hold on. Let me point out the fact that there's been some participation since I mentioned the survey yesterday, and which I will mention again now. The survey of what we read after Acts, which is not that far off. We're in chapter 21. There are 28 chapters. And as you can see right now, with 5 responses now, the leading direction is to go into the Apocrypha, and specifically to go either to the books of the Maccabees, or the book of the Wisdom of Solomon. Right now it's a 2-2 tie there. So we'll see where we go from there. And the links are going back into the comments. And now we're going to Acts. Acts chapter 21, verse 27. When the 7 days were almost completed, the Jews from Asia, seeing him in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who is teaching everyone everywhere against the people and the law in this place. Moreover, he even brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place." For they had previously seen Trophimus the Ephesian with him in the city, and they supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple. Then all the city was stirred up, and the people ran together. They seized Paul and dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. And as they were seeking to kill him, word came to the tribune of the cohort that all Jerusalem was in confusion. He at once took soldiers and centurions and ran down to them. And when they saw the tribune and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. Let's pause there for a moment. That seems a good pausing point. Verse 33. So this rite of purification takes some time. It doesn't happen immediately. It took some time. And at the point, nearing the point where it was almost complete, Paul was seen in the temple by these Jews from Asia, probably some of the very ones who caused him difficulties in Asia. It's interesting to note, isn't it, that they present a complaint as the issue. But really, their major problem in this moment is something else that's in the background. This isn't unique to this moment. How many times have we seen someone protest loudly about one thing on the surface, but really what's behind it is something else? And what's the true issue? This thing in front oftentimes is very emotional, but there's not exactly proof. But this thing behind is really what can get action, but it's not strong enough to stand on its own. So how does that work here? These enemies of Paul tell the people in Jerusalem what Paul has supposedly said about the temple, the city, and the people of Israel. But it's all hearsay. And if there was anyone in the crowd who knew Paul and his background as a Pharisee, there would likely have at least been doubts. At least. But then they go to that thing and that secondary thing. Paul has even defiled the temple. He not only speaks against it, but now he has defiled it. That is something more capable of getting Paul in trouble there in Jerusalem, because it's actually something close to that place, to that moment. Only there's a problem. There's no actual evidence of it. The residents of Jerusalem, the people of Jerusalem, wouldn't have known who Trophimus the Ephesian was. At risk of being really bad, they wouldn't have known Trophimus from Adam. But these ones from Asia do. That doesn't mean that those who know Trophimus from Asia saw him in the temple either with Paul. It's a wild goose chase. They saw Trophimus in Jerusalem with Paul. They know that Trophimus has journeyed with Paul. Whether or not they actually believe that Trophimus was in the temple with Paul, whether or not they actually believe that, it's irrelevant. But how would anyone in Jerusalem know if he was or wasn't? And so they put forth that story. And that's the background one. Does it stand on its own without the initial argument? Maybe. But somehow I doubt it. So, Paul is now an enemy of the people because he has been presented as one who has defiled the temple by bringing a Gentile into the temple. No evidence of it. None whatsoever. But it's believed. And now we have this piece added in of the Gentiles to whom Paul will be handed over, because now here come the Romans, the Roman soldiers, to intervene in a moment when Paul was dragged out of the temple and the people were seeking to kill Paul. And when the tribune and the cohorts appear, the beating of Paul stopped. So we pick up at verse 33. Then the tribune came up and arrested him and ordered him to be bound with 2 chains. He inquired who he was and what he had done. Some in the crowd were shouting one thing, some another. And as he could not learn the facts because of the uproar, he ordered him to be brought into the barracks. And when he came to the steps, he was actually carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. For the mob of the people followed, crying out, "Away with him." So Paul is now under the custody of the Romans. The Romans don't know who he is. And they will try to figure this out eventually, but right now it's just about stopping this moment of chaos, this moment of disorder. As Paul was about to be brought into the barracks, he said to the tribune, "May I say something to you?" And he said, "Do you know Greek? Are you not the Egyptian then who recently stirred up a revolt and led the 4,000 men of the assassins out into the wilderness? Paul replied, I am a Jew from Tarshish in Cilicia, a citizen of no obscure city. I beg you, permit me to speak to the people. And when he had given him permission, Paul, standing on the steps, motioned with his hand to the people. When there was a great hush, he addressed them in the Hebrew language, saying, pause there for a moment. I just said a few moments ago, remember that Romans didn't know who this was, and at that point, they didn't really care. It was just about putting an end to a moment of disorder, discord, strife, violence, a lack of control. And it's here that we get the proof that the Roman interjection into this moment really has no interest in who Paul is and no concern about the fact that they don't know. They haven't a clue. And the Tribune doesn't really care to know that, doesn't really care to recognize it until all of a sudden Paul speaks to him in Greek, in his own language. The Tribune obviously did not expect that this man would be able to converse with him. Surprise. And perhaps this Tribune should have been paying more attention, especially from this moment on, because remember this moment, because this will not be the first time that the Tribune is surprised by Paul. Paul gives him just enough of a little nugget here to get an opportunity to get permission from him to speak. Oh, Paul could have said more. We'll find that out. Paul could have said a whole lot more that would have changed this moment. Instead, that the rest of that nugget will come out and drastically change the story later. Yes, Paul is a Jew. Yes, Paul is from Tarshish in Cilicia and is thus a citizen of no obscure city, but Paul's citizenship, remember that, is greater than no obscure city, as we will find out. But enough with Paul and the Tribune right now. Let's look at Paul's response, Paul's address to the people, which is now in Hebrew. Which probably means the Tribune can't understand a word of it. The Tribune allows it. Interesting. Brothers and fathers, hear the defense that I now make before you. And when they heard that he was addressing them in the Hebrew language, they became even more quiet And he said, I am a Jew, born in Tarshish in Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel according to the strict manner of the law of our fathers, being zealous for God as all of you are this day. I persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering to prison both men and women, as the high priest and the whole council of elders can bear me witness. From them I received letters to the brothers, and I journeyed toward Damascus to take those also who were there and bring them in bonds to Jerusalem to be punished. Let's pause there for a moment. Paul speaks of his background, his credentials. The greatest of all of those credentials is that he was educated at the feet of Gamaliel, a giant in the fathers of Israel in that generation. One of the most prominent teachers, rabbis, experts on the law of God, if not the most prominent. To be a student of Gamaliel's was to be an elite. And, oh, yes, Gamaliel was a Pharisee. And so to be a student of the great Pharisee was to become a Pharisee yourself. So Paul is showing not only his credentials, but his identity. And then Paul moves in the direction of his initial reaction to the way. Being zealous, even as the crowd has been zealous on this day and on this moment. Even to the point that he was willing to go to Damascus to bring followers of the way back to Jerusalem to be punished. That's how zealous he was. And Paul is telling all of this to set the stage for the telling of the moment on the Damascus Road that changed his life forever. As I was on my way and drew near to Damascus, about noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone around me, and I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I answered, Who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, Rise and go into Damascus, and there you will be told all that is appointed for you to do. And since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, I was led by the hand by those who were with me and came into Damascus. There's the telling of the specific moment. Now, one of the things that's interesting, I don't have chapter and verse examples to correspond with this, but it's just interesting to know that there's not always full agreement on this moment, this Damascus Road moment. Oh, what the heck. It's not hard to find. But while I'm looking at this, here's where my brain is going with this. In this moment, Paul says, now where did it go? Verse 9. Oh, and that's going to point me right back to chapter 9, verse 7. All right. So verse 9 of 22. Those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking with me. They saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking. Now, granted, there is this note that says, or hear with understanding, so that might change a little bit. What's the whole issue? Chapter 9, verse 7, the men who were traveling with him stood speechless because they heard the voice but saw no one. Now, chapter 9 doesn't present as they heard the voice but didn't understand it. It's an interesting little note. Which one is true? Who knows? It's just interesting. Yeah, let's go ahead and finish this off, Paul's address. So Paul continues on about that moment in Damascus, now that he's in Damascus. And one Ananias, a devout man according to the law, well spoken of by all the Jews who lived there, came to me and standing by me said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very hour I received my sight and saw him. And he said, the God of our fathers appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear a voice from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him to everyone of what you have seen and heard. And now why do you wait? Rise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on his name. Ministry of Ananias to Paul. Ananias is one of my favorite characters in the Bible. The boldness that he would do such a thing, but we've talked about that. So let's keep moving. When I had returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance, and I saw him saying to me, make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not accept your testimony about me. And I said, Lord, they themselves know that in one synagogue after another I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of Stephen, your witness, was being shed, I myself was standing by and approving and watching over the garments of those who killed him. And he said to me, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Oh, what the heck? We're going to move on. Do one more section after this, but because it just ties in perfectly. So, Paul's message to the people is complete. And up until that final word, Paul had them in the palm of his hand. Oh, but that last word. That last word, as we will see in our final portion that we will read today, undoes everything. To the Gentiles, up to this word they listened to him. Then they raised their voices and said, "Away with such a fellow from the earth, for he should not be allowed to live." As they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, the tribune ordered him to be brought into the barracks, saying that he should be examined by flogging, to find out why they were shouting against him like this. But when they had stretched him out for the whips, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, "Is it lawful for you to flog a man who is a Roman citizen and uncondemned?" When the centurion heard this, he went to the tribune and said, "What are you about to do? For this man is a Roman citizen." So the tribune came and said to him, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" He answered, "Yes." The tribune answered, "I bought this citizenship for a large sum." Paul said, "But I am a citizen by birth." So those who were about to examine him withdrew from him immediately, and the tribune also was afraid, for he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and that he had bound him. Remember, I said there's another nugget that will surprise the tribune. Paul is indeed more than a citizen of no obscure city. He is a Roman citizen, a citizen of the empire. And, oh, yes, not merely a citizen either. Let's face it, we are not the first by any stretch of the imagination to make a distinction between those who are citizens from birth and citizens who have become citizens through some process of naturalization. We are not the first to make a distinction and have a prejudice for the one from birth and against the one made a citizen. All of this was true in the Roman Empire of old as well. And all of what the tribune had done to Paul, if Paul were just a naturalized citizen, a citizen who had purchased his citizenship like the tribune, would have been unthinkable. Oh, that the tribune did this to one who was born a citizen, appalling. And just that quick, Paul will now be treated differently from this moment on because of his citizenship as a citizen of the Roman Empire, especially as one who is so from birth. In our next time together, we will pick up at verse 30 and we will read about Paul on trial before the council. But for now, let us close our time in prayer. Let's check Facebook real quick to see if anyone else has joined us. And no. Good morning, Lorraine. Lorraine has joined us on YouTube. We're going to close with a single prayer, an Orthodox morning prayer, and it is one of my favorites. It's extremely powerful. And beautiful. Let us pray. O Lord, allow us to greet the coming day in peace. Help us in all things to rely upon your holy will. In every hour of the day, reveal your will to us. Bless our dealings with all who surround us. Teach us to treat all that comes to us throughout the day with peace of soul and with the firm conviction that your will governs all. In what we do and say, guide our thoughts and feelings. In unexpected events, do not let us forget that all things are sent by you. Teach us to act firmly and wisely without making others bitter or embarrassing them. Give us the strength to bear the fatigue of the coming day and everything that it will bring. Direct our will. Teach us to pray. Pray yourself in us. Amen. Thank you, friends, for joining us and praying with us. Please do, if you've not done so, participate in the poll. The link for this poll of what we shall read next is in the comments on YouTube and Facebook right now. Keep in mind that there will be a YouTube premiere at 1 o'clock this afternoon on YouTube, shared to Facebook. It's already on YouTube. That will be the Sabbath noonday prayers, which also include the first reading of the Sunday readings. The Sunday liturgy will be a YouTube premiere shared onto Facebook at 7:30 tomorrow morning. And then tomorrow, 3 live in-person Sunday masses, 8 and 10:30 at St. Stephen's, 9 at Holy Cross, and there is a piano recital at St. Stephen's tomorrow afternoon at 3. Note also that our daily prayers Sunday evening through Wednesday morning are YouTube premieres. They will not be live. I will be with my brother and sister clergy in the Diocese of Bethlehem for our annual clergy conference. And so the prayers are already set and ready to go. Our next live prayers will be Wednesday evening, at which point we will pick up where we just left off with our continuous reading of Acts and join Paul before the council. Thank you for praying with us. Blessings to you now and always. A blessed Sabbath to you. A blessed Sunday.